Graphene, a wonder material. It is one of the newest, hottest material in physics, but it originates from something that we have been familiar with from our childhood. It's a pencil. We all know that the lead in the pencil is made up of graphite, which is a stack of numerous layers of carbon atoms which are held together by weak van der Waals forces. Now, what graphene actually is, it's a single two-dimensional sheet of carbon atoms which are connected in a hexagonal manner, and the carbon atoms are sp2 hybridized. Since the 1960s, there have been predictions that graphene exists in an independent form, and there were many approaches as to isolate graphene, but they were not very successful, and it was finally predicted that it may not even exist in a chemically stable manner. But ironically, much further later, in 2004, it was isolated using a very complex scientific method, which is a sticky tape, which is not so very complex. So this method was adopted by the two scientists, Andrei Geim and Konstantin Novoselov. They isolated graphene just using sticky tape, and for which they won the Nobel Prize in Physics for the study in graphene in 2010. Now, after graphene was isolated, the researchers started studying graphene for all its different properties. Now we have a look at the properties. Uh, Contrary to the earlier belief, it was really chemically stable at room temperature. Also, it was virtually transparent. So it's obvious, like it's a single sheet of carbon atoms. There can be no way that the photons will be obstructed by this sheet. It's a very little frequency that they will be obstructed, but mostly it is just transparent. Another property of graphene was that it was really strong and flexible. Like, for a single sheet of atoms, it was relatively really strong, and it was able to move in three-dimensional where it was able to bear much more shear stress. So it this property made us realize it in many more applications, which we'll see later. Then also it was really high conductive in nature, or we can say it was the electron mobility was really high in it. In the case of pure graphene, the the conduction band and the valence band have a common point in them, which is called a Dirac point. We'll see that later. But the point of contact makes it really easy for electron in the valence band to travel into the conduction band, leaving a hole in the valence band. But in the case of graphene, where it is changed a little bit, it's either metal doped or functional groups are added into it. The there's a gap is generated between the bands, which makes it difficult for a electron to just go into the conduction band as if it's flowing. It needs some energy to hop into the conduction band. Now, owing to all these properties, there have been many applications that we can see of graphene. There are graphene composites. These are materials for which we can use the property of graphene, that it is so strong and flexible, to actually use them for these materials without compromising on their thickness, or because it's a single sheet of carbon atoms, it will not affect the thickness in such a significant manner. Then there's also a bulletproof vest for the similar reasons that its strength is really high. Then there are smart displays. Now these are things that we have only seen in sci-fi movies, and we have just imagined, or like we contemplate whether these will be really possible. But now graphene makes are really it realizable that maybe these can be, we can see these in the future years or something. So it uses the properties that it is highly conducting, and it's also transparent in nature. Then there are also graphene quantum dots. Now we know, we have Hariom sir, as he has explained yesterday, quantum dots take or they're energized by some light, and then they give out different emissions. So the specialty of graphene quantum dots is that they are really stable in nature, and they have a field emission of a very broad spectrum. Like they can emit UV, visible, and infrared also. Also they are uh, really less they have a really low toxicity, which makes them really good for the purposes like in medical or something. Then there are nanomaterials, which like graphene is the mother of all the carbon nanomaterials, like fullerene, carbon nanotubes, or graphene oxide. We will also get to know more about carbon nanotubes and the applications from our next presenter. So we'll just not talk about it right now. There are also single electron transistors. Now these transistors are actually, like the researchers, they predict that these transistors can uh, put back the silicon age, where everything was silicon really dominated our technology. Now we can expect for graphene to dominate the technology after a few innovations. Then graphene has also inspired a totally new field of study, which is called the twistronics. It it is a study in which two one-dimensional sheets are, or graphene sheets are kept on one another, and they're twisted in some angle, so that there are sides where there is total insulation, and there are sides where uh, conductivity, it's like superconductive in nature. So there is a special angle called magic angle, where it is really superconductive. So it's still a new idea, but we can expect it to develop it furthermore in the coming years. Then it has also medical applications like DNA sequencing, which helps researchers study genes. Then even if there are so many applications of graphene, these are a proof of concept. They have not been commercially scaled right now. Now this is because to some of the limitations. So the first limitation is that it is not possible, or rather not possible, it's very complex to make long or wide sheets of graphene, because it's making just a continuous sheet of graphene as big as your phone screen is as difficult as making 10,000 kilometers wide of a continuous paper. Like if we scale, if we compare it, it's really difficult. So, and also the handling of the graphene sheet has to be really it's sensitive to some materials, and we have to protect it from those things. Then this is actually a property of graphene, which also acts as a limitation. The lack of band gap makes it difficult for graphene to be used as transistors, because in transistors we know that there you need to have total insulation and conduction, both of them at the same time. But since the electrons are so easily flowable in graphene, it's really difficult for you to provide areas of insulation. Also, in the in ideal conditions, we can imagine graphene to have all these properties, but when we actually try to realize them in our world or try to apply them, we have to use it on like we have to use it after it is incorporated is something like you have to deposit it on a substrate and then use it for your further applications. But depositing it on a substrate makes its actual properties diminish a little bit, so you can't use the ideal properties of graphene that frequently. So keeping the theme of graphene for a little while away, let's imagine a particle like a pendulum which is suspended in air, not in air, let's say vacuum, where there is no air resistance or nothing. We can imagine it that it just goes on forever. But there, if it is kept in air or it's kept in water, it affects the motion of the pendulum bob very significantly. So most of the particles that we imagine, the fundamental particles, are what we imagine them as of in free space. But when they actually interact with their surroundings, they cause themselves to have a different mass than their fundamental or original particles. These kind of particles are called as quasi-particles. So these are particles with an effective mass which is different from the original mass. One of the easiest examples that we can understand this is by is a hole, which is the absence of an electron. Now these quasi-particles are the ones which are responsible for conduction in materials like silicon. So if it is responsible for conduction in silicon, is it the same case for graphene? Well, let's see. The electron-like particles in silicon, and we can just say that the electric charge carriers in graphene. Will say later what they actually are. So the particles in silicon have effective mass and are very similar to that of electron, whereas the charge carriers in graphene are nearly massless. Also, the particles in silicon have a much lower conductivity than that of metals, whereas here the charge carriers have high conductivity, as we saw in the properties. Then, due to the really slow velocity or mobility in the semiconductor, they obey all the Newton's laws, and theory of relativity is just not applicable here. But in graphene, they show relativistic behavior similar to a neutrino. It's just similar to a neutrino, it's not neutrino. So let's note that. Also, even if the speed of or velocity of these charge carriers is much less, or it's 300 times less than the speed of light, but it still shows some relativistic behavior. Also, difference is that these electron-like particles in silicon, they obey Schrodinger's equation, whereas the carriers in graphene, they obey the Dirac's equations, which is why we can say that these are direct quasi-particles. Now, this is a really stark difference between these two types of particles, which makes us realize that there is something that in quantum mechanics that should include relativistic behavior of particles. But till then, we had not discovered anything like that. So there comes quantum electrodynamics, or we can say it is the relativistic quantum mechanics. So it's a quantum field theory which studies the interaction between light and matter, as when it is the first theory that actually is in agreement with both special relativity and our quantum mechanics. Then one of the consequences of quantum electrodynamics are antiparticles. They're just the same as particles, nothing different, but they have a different charge than those of the original particles. Now, example is an electron and a positron, which can also be called as anti-electron, with the same mass and just a different charge. Another consequence of quantum electrodynamics is tunneling. Now, we have really exhaustively discussed on this yesterday, but we'll still revise it again. In classical physics, tunneling is just not possible. The barrier is stubborn enough to stop the electron, and there is no possibility of it going to the other side. In quantum mechanics, the electron as a wave, as the electron as a wave with a slow and with a low energy, can tunnel through the barrier with a lesser probability, which is never 100%. But in quantum electrodynamics, what happens that the electron has a relativistic speed, or really high speed, which can easily travel through the barrier with 100% probability. The actual logic is that rather than logic, the phenomenon that happens here is called Klein tunneling. So what happens in Klein tunneling is that the condition is that when a relativistic particle approaches a barrier, the barrier height, which is called V naught, should be much greater than that of the rest energy mass of the electron. And if it is so, the barrier acts like a totally transparent area for the electron, and it is definitely going to pass through it. Now, one method of understanding it is, it's a really abstract idea, but I encourage you to try to understand it. Imagine there is a hill, like a barrier hill, and this is an electron on this side. Now, these kind of barrier hills, they are repulsive to electrons, but they are really attractive to positron states. So, where the electron is able to go through the valley, anti-world valley, if you would say, the anti-world valley is, if you imagine it in an upside down way, it's like it's a where the electron is right now is like anti-world hill, and this is anti-world valley. So it's really easy for the actual thing that this goes through this is like it's energy state, like it's a hole that acts like a positron or an anti-electron, and it helps the electron to go through the barrier all through the other side, and when finally it goes to the other side, it comes back as an electron. Like, it views the anti-world valley as if it was just transparent. If there are enough energy states available for the electron to pass through, the possibility of it going is definitely like 100%. So even if we have earlier seen that that graphene has so many limitations that may stop it from being realized in commercial scaling or anything, we can always see that it has many we can always appreciate it for being a really good material for research. Like, it's like it's also an ideal material for spintronics. It has something called a spin order effect that is really low in graphene, which helps it just a good material for study in spintronics also. So without being discouraged that we cannot realize these things right now, there are many research applications for graphene that we should appreciate, and we should use it in our further endeavors. Then with that, I would like to conclude.
Very nice presentation, Shreya. Thank you very much. Okay, I noticed that all the questions that are in the chat have been addressed. I noticed that there is a question from Tanmay. How do we separate graphene from the sticky tape?
It was just actually the first thing that was used to isolate it. So I'm not totally sure about it, but
Yes, that's actually a not easy question to answer because I don't think I have the answer to that question myself. The process of using tape, while it has been extremely successful, the exact mechanics of that process are not very straightforward. What really goes on in the system is that you are trying to have multiple layers of your graphite. You take the tape, you're sticking it on the tape, you press it a little bit so that the glue is sticking nicely. Then as you peel off, some layers stick, some layers don't stick. So this is not actually a confirmed process. It's not a deterministic process. So if you do this 100 times, you may get a success rate of a certain number of times. So that's the real problem why this technology, while it is so successful in creating graphene, very high quality graphene, it is not easy to scale this up in a systematic manner. Somebody asked the question, why is it expensive? It's because there is no way to systematically scale this up to large areas. There are alternative techniques apart from the sticky tape technique, which are commercial processes. But the quality of graphene, unfortunately, is not as high as what you can get with sticky tape. It's very surprising, but that is exactly the reality here. As Shreya mentioned, the key number here is mobility. If that mobility goes down, then the property changes. So that's the issue here. Okay, so that's the thing. MGS, you have a question? Go ahead.
Beautiful presentation by Shreya. Actually, I learned or it excited me a lot to study more. But there's one question, one image that came to me looking at the Kleins tunneling and so on. I get this idea that the quantum world can be imagined as a world without friction and gravity, and therefore many things that are many of our anti-intuitive notions of thing come from constantly imagining the world with gravity and friction. How accurate is this kind of a thing? Because when you're talking about reverse hill or valley, that can happen. That's anti-intuitive because in a world with gravity we can't imagine that. But in a world without gravity, hill and valley have no meaning.
It's an totally abstract idea. So it's not. I don't think it's appropriate to actually literally take it literally. But it's different. Like it has much of a mathematical backing. So we will not try to go into that right now.
MGS, I think your question is very interesting, but it actually indicates a very common misconception that students may have. Okay, I would like to categorically address this right now. So when we say hill or valley, this is not a physical hill or valley. We're talking about a potential barrier here. Okay. Right. So you have a potential barrier here. We have discussed this when we played with the videos of tunneling. We discussed the online videos, right? So we had the online demonstration. So you have a potential barrier here. We're talking that the energy of the electron or the object, which is the quantum object, is lower than the energy allowed by the barrier. That's what we mean by the barrier. In that sense, it's a hill. But for an object that is an antiparticle, you flip that upside down, that actually looks like a quantum potential where it can exist. Okay, so the two processes are inverted with respect to each other. So this has got nothing to do with friction. This has got nothing to do with real hill or valley or gravity for that matter. If you want to bring gravity into quantum mechanics, as to study about if you have a potential just like gravity, F equals, energy equals to mgh, you can also still do that. And you have quantum mechanical solutions to those kind of objects. In fact, they are often used in emission and so on and so forth. Okay? So it should not be misconstrued with ideas of classical physics at all. Okay. Let's have one last question. Abhishek, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask that we learned in quantum mechanics, as shown in the presentation, that only partial tunneling is possible. But in quantum electrodynamics, how is 100% tunneling possible? What changed in that perspective?
Shreya, go ahead.
So if I'd like to share my screen again, just a minute, okay. Just a minute. Yeah. So this is the kind of conduction band, valence band area that we can see here, and this is a particle that has an energy like a 0.1 electron volt. Now this is a direct point, as we mentioned earlier. Now this direct point is always on the x-axis, so we can imagine it that it just elevates it elevates itself at the point at the area of the barrier. So if you imagine, and if the barrier height is greater than that of the energy of the electron, so it is possible for this electron to take a whole positron energy state. It does not convert into a positron, definitely. It takes energy state and it tunnels through this a barrier and it goes on the other side. What the Klein tunneling says is that the more the height of the barrier, the higher the probability that the electron is going to transmit, which is actually totally opposite that of the usual quantum mechanics. We can visualize that is if this height is really high, so then this point will go really high, and this cone, you can imagine it like a really narrow and really heighted cone, and then the area which is possible at this height is much greater. So there are many more states which, or the probability of it is going really high from this area when it is elongated like this, rather than going from such a small area. Rather, if we consider a different case, when it is just the same height, it is not possible for it to tunnel through it because there are no energy states here. Is it enough? Or
Yes, I also wanted to ask that you said that electron wave travels at a higher speed. Is that also a contributing factor?
yeah, it has to be a relativistic particle, only then it can quantum electrodynamics is based on relativistic particles. So definitely if you have to observe a phenomenon of quantum electrodynamics, it has to be a relativistic particle.
Okay, thank you.